Everyone. We live in an era where we want politicians to take public transit and buses, but we don't blink when the Prime Minister has 2 private jets. Who needs a private jet? Isn't there a passenger plane heading to most of the world these days? If you need to go to a private airport, maybe you could take a smaller plane once you got to the main massive area where you're going to go to via economy or business class and your security team on either side. And if you really need to take over first class, by all means, why not? But why is the precedent set that world leaders get to jet set on private planes? It seems strange. They're public servants. They're not rock stars, right? The Post-Millennial is reporting Trudeau takes private jet for vacation when Boris Johnson flies economy. So I like Boris Johnson. I think he's funny. And I think that he communicates well. He's done a good job of branding 10 Downing Street the same way Trump has done a good job of branding the White House, right? The White House now has a bumper at the end that says White House. 10 Downing Street does the same. Now, previously, Boris's predecessor didn't make any of those aesthetic branding changes, right? And well, I mean, we live in a new era, right? 2020 is a couple of days away, and we do have these things that branding is relatively easy, right? So it seems crazy that, again, these elites can jet set, but have their branding way off. And Boris is fixing that. And this is good for his brand, right? This is good for him. This is a great picture. Thumbs up. He's got lots of smiling people around him, working people who understand that he could have taken a private jet, but he didn't. And Canadians understand that he could have taken a public plane, but he didn't, right? And I'm not going to go through this. This is talking about the difference between the two. Here's a further one. How many private jets does Justin Trudeau need for his vacation? These are both from the Post-Millennial. And this is legitimate questions, right? These are legitimate questions that why is it that we want public servants to take a bus? But no, yeah, take the plane, take a couple of private jets, no problem. Carbon footprint, what carbon footprint? Carbon emergency, climate emergency. Yeah, right. We believe it, right? But what you believe, what you say you believe, and how you act may be different, right? Interesting, right? And further to the point, electric vehicles, despite being mandated by the Trudeau government, despite being largely seen as a cure-all by people who think they're better than you if they own them, and I think that it's funny because they cost twice as much, right? If you're going to buy a Tesla, you're talking like $80,000 to $120,000. So you have that much to spend on a car. I don't have that much to spend on a car, and I don't think I would anyway. I'd probably buy a faster computer. But what are you going to do? I never was a car guy. But the point is, the lithium batteries, which I've talked about before, but here's the CBC reporting yesterday, and they released it at 4 a.m. Electric vehicles are supposed to be green, but the truth is a bit murkier. Yeah, a bit murkier. It's not all that murky. It's the information about lithium ion mining, etc., is just a Google search away. Google hasn't scrubbed that yet. Anyway, CBC's reporting, quote, mining lithium for batteries, plus how they're charged can affect an EV's impact on the environment. At gatherings of electric vehicles enthusiasts, the curious surround Rob Spreitziger and his car. Both are celebrities in these circles. He's known as High Mileage Rob, having driven more than 115,000 kilometers in his Tesla Model 3 in a little more than a year of ownership. No other Model 3 in Canada is believed to have reached that milestone in such a short time, and it's possible no other battery-only electric vehicle has either. And not once has he stopped for gas, never changed the oil. Quote, I probably saved about $10,000 last year. Spreitzer says, sorry, I got your name wrong. And I want to point out that, okay, if you save $10,000, maybe if you bought a $40,000 vehicle, right, you're ahead by more than half, right? Because I'm sure your Tesla cost over $100,000. Maybe it's $80,000, but still, you're ahead by a lot, more than $10,000 anyway. Back to the article. He's also trying to save the planet by eliminating greenhouse gas emissions. His car, like other zero-emission EVs, doesn't have a tailpipe, and a popular online carbon calculator shows it has zero carbon output. But that doesn't mean there isn't a carbon footprint. Where does your power come from? Some EV batteries today pack 10 times as much power as an average household uses in a day, and often those electric vehicles are being charged at home. Most of the electricity generated by North American grids has some greenhouse gas emissions connected to it. So even if a car isn't belching carbon, it doesn't mean it's perfectly clean. For instance, coal is about the dirtiest way to generate electricity to recharge a car battery. Powering an EV with electricity generated from coal is marginally better than burning gasoline in an internal combustion engine, according to numbers compiled by Jennifer Dunn at Northwestern University's Center for Engineering, Sustainability, and Resilience. Now, I want to point out there are Canadian provinces that rely on coal. According to Google, Canadian provinces relying on coal. Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Nova Scotia are by far the most coal-dependent provinces, each relying on the fuel to produce roughly half of their electricity. So if you own an electric vehicle in those areas, according to Ms. Dunn, you might as well just own a gas vehicle, because, I mean, charging your vehicle with that awful, awful power generated by coal is exactly the same, pretty much. Pretty close, right? And here's your chart, handy chart. Anyway, I think charts like that are funny. Back to the article. Most North American grids are composed of a mix of generating sources from coal to hydro to nuclear. Though Canada has pledged to eliminate coal-burning plants by 2030, when that mix is taken into account, charging a car generally creates less than half the carbon emissions compared to gasoline, according to Dunn. It's only when electricity comes from clean, renewable sources like wind and solar that you see the most pronounced drop in EV emissions generated to power the car. Okay, so hold on a second. If the energy is not coming from wind and solar, then you might as well not do it. I mean, like, they're saying, oh yeah, you can, it's okay, but it's not as good, right? But here's the reality of Alberta. And Alberta's, as far as energy goes, they are, as far as I know, on the cutting edge in Canada. They know what there is to know about energy in Canada, and that includes renewables and solar, and they want into those markets, right? But the tech doesn't exist yet. You can't replace the production of the province of Alberta with any green tech. It doesn't work, right? And that's the measure, right? And so here is reliable Alberta energy, and they list historically through tweets and Twitter the generating of each type of power. They say 19 hours ago, at this moment, 93.73% of Alberta's electricity is being produced by fossil fuels. Wind is a 9.26 of capacity and producing 1.63 of total generation, while solar is at 20% of capacity and producing 0.03% of total generation. At the same time, we are importing 119 megawatts, or 1.2%. So the overwhelming majority of Alberta's electricity is being produced by fossil fuels. Over 90%. The other percentages don't even account for the rest of it because we have to import some. Right? Isn't that incredible? So how can we start talking about electric vehicles when, if they're saying the best benefit is wind and solar, well, less than 8% of people will get the energy that looks like that? Is this realistic? It's insane. It's completely insane. Totally around the bend. So, welcome to Canada, where facts don't matter. And if you don't feel it, then you're a Nazi, misogynistic, far-right, alt-right, white supremacist. It's insane. This whole thing is crazy. Anyway, back to the article. I just think it's crazy. And if you talk to people about this, they will look past you like you've gone into a church and you've told them very reasonably that their God doesn't exist. They will just look past you like you're not a serious person and you're not worth talking to. It's wild. It's wild. 2019. Become woke and just dehumanize your fellow people unless they totally agree with you. So crazy. Anyway, back to this. Where does your battery come from? Before an electric vehicle even charges for the first time, however, one key part of its power system already has a significant carbon footprint. One really important aspect of an EV to think about is its battery, explains Dunn. For example, the material that helps power the battery is produced from a number of different metals, things like nickel and cobalt and lithium. Mining and processing the materials, plus the battery manufacturing process involves substantial emissions of carbon. Lithium mining needed to build the lithium-ion batteries at the heart of today's EVs has also been connected to other kinds of environmental harm. There have been mass fish kills related to lithium mining in Tibet, for example. The freshwater supply is being consumed by mines in South America's lithium-rich region. Even in North America, where mining regulations are strict, harsh chemicals are used to extract the valuable metal. And all the operations are energy intensive, sometimes running on diesel generators, relying on carbon emitting heavy machinery. Hold on a second. Why don't they use Teslas to extract the lithium? Right? I mean, if you're going to do it, you might as well commit to it, right? Don't use those dirty, awful fossil fuels and diesel generators to get the lithium batteries you need to run your phones and your computers. No, use the lithium ion batteries to get the more lithium. Except that it doesn't work. If you look up any heavy machinery, it works about half of what it's advertised to work. There was an 8-hour paver or something to that effect that ran out after 4 hours, and they were using a diesel generator to charge it. And while they were waiting for it to charge, they were using the gasoline-powered same piece of equipment. And the construction guys were laughing. They were saying that probably cost the boss a lot of money. Ha ha ha! It doesn't work. It's a joke. It's a joke. The tech's not there yet. Anyway, back to this. Adding to the cumulative effects on the environment, lithium demand is expected to at least triple by 2025, pushing more exploration and extraction globally. Oh, you thought drilling for oil was bad? Welcome to the post-2020 era. Back to the article. And all that extracted raw material, once the batteries are worn out, will land somewhere. It's something Andrew McDonald at Maritime Auto Parts in Debert, Nova Scotia, is thinking about. His facility recycles car parts, and he says it's only a few more years before his industry will start seeing EVs and their lithium-ion batteries in the scrapyard. As pure electric vehicles come onto the market, there's less wearable parts, so it's going to change what we sell, he says. McDonald adds that his company is already receiving nickel metal hydrate batteries from early model hybrids and is figuring out what to do with them. Quote, "We do our own research, but it would be nice to have better partnerships with the original equipment manufacturers to understand exactly what we're dealing with. What are the best methods and procedures and policies in handling them? There's lots of stuff going on in research labs around the world trying to figure out what to do with these things, but certainly there's a big potential for what you can do with them," he says. Okay, so there's a couple things here. One, you would think that if the governments around the world are pushing for movement to EVs, they would have thought of this. They're essentially saying, you guys being the four founders of the auto industry and the oil industry, the energy industry, and make no mistake, the energy industry is what made the West rich, right? Cheap energy, cheap electricity made the West rich. And they're saying, you didn't know what you were doing when you were burning these fossil fuels. Now we have better tech, which I've just talked about. We don't have that tech, but now we have better tech that we can just take the energy from the sun, and this burning fossil fuels is killing the planet. That's a hoax. It's not happening. They're just extracting tax dollars. But they're using it to push what they're trying to achieve here. But you'd think they'd have some plan to not fall into the same trap those oil people fell into that started, quote, destroying our environment. And they were supposed to have known about it, right? These people do know about this. There is no plan for batteries after they're done. And I've had conversations with people who say, oh, they're going to use the batteries to power fridges. There's a plan for the batteries when they can't be used in cars. They'll be used for decades powering fridges and powering other things. And that doesn't appear to be the case at all. Like, there's no rules around this. There's no guidelines around this. They're being sent to scrapyards, and the scrapyards are saying, yeah, I'm sure they're going to be valuable, but I don't know how yet. It seems like you're advocating for the solution to a problem and saying we've totally got this figured out. And then when questioned on it, even just a little bit, oh yeah, what are you going to do when 1 million cars or 2 million cars, how many cars are on the road in Canada right now? I'm going to find out. Okay, here's vehicle registrations as of 2018. Note that they're continually increasing, right? Public transit is not taking cars off the road, but still 35 million cars. So what happens when all of those cars are electric vehicles? What happens when 35 million battery packs no longer function? What do you do with that? That is a much bigger calamity than the pretend hoax that is going on right now. And is real. It's going to fill up space. It's going to fill up millions and millions of cars. I mean, it defies reason that people ignore these problems. And yes, are these people optimistic? Sure. They're supposed to be optimistic. They're saving the planet after all, right? But it still doesn't make sense to not have a plan for this. Not have legislation for this. Not say, when designing for an electric vehicle, make the battery pack compatible with X or whatever, or using these raw materials or whatever. And I understand that having regulation kills business, but at the same time, what are you going to do with all of this waste? Back to the article. He says, if reuse is considered in the initial design, applications for batteries can be wide-ranging when their state of health or charging capacity is no longer adequate for an electric vehicle. The best option companies are looking at is to remanufacture cells into new battery packs for an electric vehicle. That means taking apart the individual lithium-ion cells that make up an EV battery, removing the unhealthy ones, and reassembling them for continued EV use. Beyond powering cars, there are other second life applications being explored for lithium-ion cells, primarily rooted in energy grid and mobile energy storage, which can include acting as a power reserve for electric vehicle charging stations. In the new energy economy, things go hand in hand, says Harper. The challenge now is moving these kinds of applications beyond research labs and cottage industries. Harper says batteries aren't necessarily designed for disassembly right now, and to make it economically feasible, when EVs start to see mass adoption, there's still work to be done. Quote, we need to make sure we invest time and energy to find the right way of doing things and solutions that are to scale of what's coming down the line, he says. So it's just not well thought out. And the actions of our leaders belie the lie. And they're just going to continue propagating it because, well, that whole looking past anybody who disagrees with them, right? There's a whole lot of that going on these days too. With only a few days left in 2019, only a few days left in the decade, where there's the differences between now and 2009 are stark to me. It's very interesting. Very interesting to see what's going on. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.